Want to sharpen your game? Join the DFM Coaching Patreon for exclusive technique breakdowns and mindset training. Now, let's get started.
Welcome to Tapped In. My name is David Figaro-Martinez, and today we're going to be discussing that really quiet and visible season that you're going to have. Early on, everything feels real new, real fresh. There's a lot of emotion between everything. There's just a lot of life and color. Everything just feels new. You're going to break away from that at some point, and it's different for everybody. And for some of us, it happens at each and every individual belt we encounter. It can happen at black belt. It can happen at brown, blue. And it's just a season where things don't feel like they're happening for you. More like just quiet work that people aren't noticing. And sometimes that season can kind of dissuade us from continuing to work towards something because it doesn't feel recognized. It doesn't feel important. It doesn't feel like it even matters. And sometimes we can feel like we're going through the motions. You're going to hit that spot throughout your career. I have hit it. I've thankfully had the mindset of I've kind of enjoyed the process for the most part. So it's never really been a hindrance for me to feel like I'm doing this quiet work and it's just not being noticed. Real reality for me, I've kind of understood that the most important work is that shit that, again, most people don't see. So I've been okay with that process personally. I've watched students who can get lost in that and feel like progression isn't what they want, or they're not where they think they should be. They're framing things in more a comparative aspect with, I see this person, they're doing it and they're getting so much better than I am, and this person over here is doing this and that. It's really easy to get into those stages. And what it's going to look like on the mat is going to be different for most people, or everyone, I should say. But what it often looks like is those when you're training consistently, but you're not really dominating rounds. The rounds are kind of iffy. You're not having submissions. You're improving. Maybe your timing's getting better, and timing's, again, something that's really hard to quantify. We can quantify a tap. We can quantify a transition, a sweep, something very specific. I did this and I got this result that I wanted. Timing is sometimes, especially when you're improving it, you can't really quantify as a success if you're not looking at it from an in-depth level. So sometimes your timing is getting better. You're not really aware, but you're not getting the finishes you want. You're not really finishing people at your level. You may not even be finishing a whole lot of people at the belt below you, and that can sometimes be discouraging for people. But it'll also look like maybe you're getting harder to sweep. Maybe your base is getting a little bit better. You're harder to get passes on. Like you're really like fighting it. And again, that's something that's a little hard to quantify. Like 3 months ago, I was passing your guard with minimal effort. Now I got to think about it a little bit. You're defending a little bit better. You're using your post, your feet, your elbows, your frames. And maybe I'm still getting the pass, but it's taking me a little bit more effort. You might be focusing on he's still passing instead of quantifying, hey, it's taking a little longer to get where he wants to get. That's a win. But that's kind of like that invisible area that we can sometimes overlook because we look at, I want this sweep. I want this submission. I want to be able to get to this guard. And when I can't get there, we kind of get a little dissuaded. We don't think we're making the progress we want. Another thing that will sometimes be noticed by me or people who are more experienced, but specifically instructors, is that you're asking better questions. You may not notice. As an instructor, I'll notice when students will ask, how do I get out of this? And that's not a great question. Yes, I can answer the question. I can give you the feedback that you want and tell you this is how I get out of side control. But a slightly better question is, Johnny puts me in side control and he has this immense shoulder pressure and balance. I can't seem to negate that. Now it's a specific question. It's something specific that you're dealing with that I can now replicate because that person might be in the room. So now we can discuss it. We could have Johnny get down. He gets in top. And then we start really discussing what he's working for and what you should be working for. When I see students start asking more specific questions, I'm like, okay, they're kicking into the next gear. They're understanding the game a little bit better. They're understanding exactly what's happening to them. When students kind of say, and these aren't, I'm not dissuading anyone from asking. I want you to ask all the questions, no matter how silly you might think they are. They're important. But when a student goes from, how do I get out from side control to, hey, Johnny puts me in this specific type of side control, and I can't seem to negate the pressure and the controls, we can really get in depth at that stage. If you give me a broader question, I might answer the question in a broad sense, but it may not work for you because you're talking, oh no, he's really like putting a shoulder of justice into my face. And I'm just talking side control in the general sense. So when they start asking questions, I'm like, okay, they're getting there. They're making that next step. Sometimes you'll leave class in like that thoughtful process or phase, but you're not hyped for anything that happened because nothing really happened. Nothing great happened at that stage. Nothing spectacular that you get to tell your friends about or your spouse about. You don't get to go home and be like, oh, I submitted this brown belt today. None of that is happening. It's just really mundane drilling or sparring. You're not doing anything great. You're not necessarily doing anything awful. And you're just in that invisible stage where you're growing. We all go through it. And this is where like the most important work gets done, where you start thinking about becoming even more consistent, or maybe you are consistent already. You have something in mind that you're working on. You might have long-term short goals, but there are no really highs and really lows. I equate it to, I have worked in warehouses for the majority of my adult life. And the thing that I've noticed about working in warehouses is that companies don't really respect the warehouse. They don't value it. They don't see the importance of it. Everything that's front-facing, the cashier, the maintenance worker, the person who is selling cars, the person who is doing a service for someone, that front-facing gets most of the attention in the business, in the companies and businesses that I've worked at, because it's front-facing. The customer actually sees it. The people in charge see it more. They see that interaction more. The warehouse, on the other hand, is this quiet, constantly moving, and sometimes adapting force that gets really ignored because it's behind a double door somewhere in a dank part of the building. Certain people work there. You may or may not have met them. They don't come to mind when you think the success of a company. It's common. It's happened literally at every company I've worked for. But you can't negate how important that group is because they make the product move. They're receiving things in. They're making transfers. They're making sure the stuff gets on the shelf or gets in the showroom or gets in front of the customer or whatever it might be. They are the lifeblood of the entire company. This quiet or invisible season that you're having is exactly that. It will not get noticed, even by you. Sometimes it may not get noticed from the instructor necessarily. And there's nothing flashy. There's nothing super like great necessarily, but it's all the quiet work. It's you're drilling with intention. You have goals. You have, when you go to open mats, you have something in mind that you're working on. In that building stage, again, no one really likes, like when you're driving through town and you see the outlines of a building or the structure of the building. It's all wood and people are working on it. You don't think anything. It's whatever. And then when you drive back again in a couple of months, and the glass is in place and the doors are in place and it looks all shiny and new. And then you're like, oh, wow, the building looks beautiful, or that house looks beautiful. That's what you're doing right now. You're working on the things that you need to be working on. But the trap is that you don't think you're improving, that you think everyone else is passing you by, that maybe you're not built for this. So you start doubting whether you should do this or not. This podcast, for example, there was a moment where I was like, I don't know if I should keep doing this. And then a couple months went by, and I could see the growth now. And it's like, okay, I'm happy I kept at it. The same's going to happen with your game. You're going to get to a certain point where things are going to really start clicking. And there's going to be this point where you are building the structure or the foundation of your game. And once you get to a certain stage, the things start to click. And once they start to click, there's a speed ramp that you naturally going to get on, because now you're understanding your body mechanics, how you move, how flexible you might be. You start recognizing patterns. You can adjust to the patterns. You can respond to the patterns. You can create patterns of your own. You start understanding the flow. Like Jiu-Jitsu has this flow that you can't ignore once you get to a certain belt level. You can't unsee it. And that's really what we're working towards. We call it building a game, all this other stuff. Great. Learning techniques, great. But overall, it's about decision-making and pattern recognition. I can recognize, right now I'm working on octopus guard. When someone moves their hand out of the way, I can sit up and reach around the lower back. Once I get there, if they don't put their arm and try to force me back onto their back, I'm sweeping or I'm taking the back. I've recognized that pattern. It wasn't there 3 weeks ago, but I've gotten to the point where I can understand this mechanic and I understand where I can go and where I shouldn't go. So when it's in front of me, I'm immediately moving. I'm not waiting for something else. I recognize the pattern and what I should do now. And that's just, you're going to get to that on-ramp, and again, everything's going to click. It may not be brown, black, purple belt level. You might be a blue belt and getting to purple belt, and it's going to click for that level. And as you start moving in, you're just going to understand better. You're going to understand things better. You're going to see things better. You're going to feel emotion within your opponent. They'll lean a certain way. Their weight will shift, and your mind will say, go. And you'll have some built-in techniques and responses that are going to respond to that. It's just hard working through that invisible season. Really hard. It's hard on the ego. It's hard on the body sometimes. But it's just, you have to focus on like concepts that you're listening to or working through. Measure how long you're surviving in bad positions. Measure how long maybe you're from when a submission gets initiated versus actually finished. There's people that, like I was doing arm bars for a bit, a couple of months, and my students would fall to the arm bar really quick early on. And by week 2, 3, 4, 5, they started responding better. I would have to adjust. I would have to switch to the far side arm, or I would have to fight grips a bit better because they started understanding the mechanics of what I needed to do, and they were reverse engineering it in order to stay alive. So start measuring, hey, maybe you're still getting arm barred again, like I mentioned before, but it's taking a long time. It's forcing them to work. That's an adjustment, and that's an increase in your favor. It doesn't mean that you're stagnant. You're collecting the little tidbits that you need. So I want people to just really don't get on yourself negatively about these things. This phase is part of everyone's growth. It is going to be hard to measure. It's not going to look successful or flashy or sexy at all times. And you're just going to have to continue to grind. And I understand that whole thought of like, oh, trust the process. It sounds weird, sounds kind of gimmicky, but really, you really do. Have communication with your instructor, your training partners, because they're going to tell you things that other people aren't going to say. For example, I was at a Sunny Dojo the other day doing a workshop. in the class overheard one of the brown belts discussing a blue belt's game and how he's increased and he's gotten better. And the blue belt humbly just kind of brushed it off and made jokes. And I overheard it, didn't say anything. I later messaged that blue belt. When we give you compliments, one, we're not lying. Whenever I do it, there's no lie behind it. I'm genuinely noticing a difference. You don't notice it. When you're in the action, when you're the student, we are terrible. We're terrible judgment of our growth. We're just terrible at it. We look at the negatives. We look at all the things we can't do. We look at all the things that we're still not doing. So when a brown belt, purple belt, and one of the senior students comes in and gives you a compliment, they mean it. Because when you haven't rolled with someone in a couple of weeks, couple of months, and you roll with them again, there's genuinely a difference. I've rolled with this gentleman myself, and I noticed a difference. He was responding better. He's framing better. He's doing a lot of things better. He's going to open mats a bit more, so he's getting a little bit more looks. Take that compliment. Don't brush it off. Genuinely take it. Those are those little nuggets that you're going to need to survive off of, because your inner voice isn't the kindest. So sometimes when you get those compliments, understand what they are. They're a breath of fresh air. They're genuine compliments because we don't have to hand them out. And build on it. Understand that, hey, this is like a little nugget. You're doing the exact same thing, the right thing that you're supposed to be doing. Don't beat yourself up about it. Understand it. Keep growing with it. You're on the right path. If you have any questions on this or anything else, please let me know. We also have a free school community. I put all my recorded workshops on there. Technique of the week. We discuss a couple of things here and there. We have Q&A, completely free. So if you have time in your day, please sign up. Until next time, thank you so much.